Hello everyone. Welcome. Both to those who are here live and I can see you face to face and have a heart-to-heart conversation, and those that are in cyberspace that can only see me and I can't see you, which limits the ability to have a true relationship. It's not just a long-distance relationship, it's a one-sided relationship. I meet people who know me very well, know everything about me and my family and my personal life and my personality because they've been listening and watching. And when they meet me, they smile as if you met an old friend, and I have no clue who they are. It's not more than once, many times. And it's just an interesting byproduct, I guess, of our modern culture, where once upon a time that was not possible. If you knew them, they knew you. Today, someone can know you and you don't know them at all, meaning you never even met them. And so it's interesting. You get used to it, but it leads me into the theme of this discussion this evening, which is about the information revolution that this age is called. Technology, information, unprecedented, that we can access anything, anywhere, anytime. Middle of your shower, you can be texting and be texted. You can be half asleep in bed and press a button and know whatever's going on. So basically it's like a 24/7 thing. If your Shomer Shabbos is 24/6, but the bottom line is essentially everywhere information. So it seems like utopia in the sense that you can access so much information. The question, of course, the obvious question is, are our lives better? Are our relationships healthier? Our psychological welfare and well-being more sound, less dysfunctional? Are we more intimate? Are we more in touch with ourselves, with God, with our souls? So obviously it's a rhetorical question. Technology doesn't change anything, as they would say, and they still say junk in, junk out. As a matter of fact, you could say technology, all it really does is speed everything up. So it speeds up the junk as well, if it's junk. So if you have problems in any dysfunctional area, if you go on the internet, you'll just find out about another million people that are like you. And the same is true as far as obviously on the positive end of things. Because at the end of the day, the technology really accelerates things. It's a number cruncher. You could speed things up. You could access a lot of information which would have taken maybe a lifetime or many lifetimes. Today, you can access in a few minutes. I remember William Safire, the great columnist of the New York Times. He wrote an article at the beginning of the information revolution. It was 20 years ago, just the beginnings of the internet. And he wrote something very interesting. He wrote that basically the trade secret, or the power, the strategic edge of a good journalist, were his connections, were his contacts, was the information he was able to access. With a few phone calls, he was able to find out stuff that others could not. So he would get the scoop, so to speak. So people would read these excellent journalists who had good connections, had cultivated and developed relations. So when something was going on in the news, you could have an inside story. They had access to what was called valuable information. And he says what's changing is dramatically that all this information will soon be accessible to everybody. So the question is, what will be the role of a good journalist, of a good writer? And what he wrote was quite prescient for him at the time. He wrote that the role of a good writer will be the opposite, to become an information traffic cop, which means to be able to sift through all the information and help you see which is vital and which is not vital. So everything's going to be reversed. That was what he predicted. Well, it was already happening. That instead of having access to that key piece of news, today everyone has access to everything. But the problem is it's all like a diamond in the rough. It's scattered and obscured by the loads and loads mountains of information. It's hard to distinguish what is valuable, what isn't valuable. I think there's a website that I saw recently called Worthless Information or something like that, or uselessknowledge.com. It's a very interesting website actually. It has more knowledge than a lot of the so-called useful knowledge sites. Useless knowledge meaning there's no particular utility that you can use it, but it has interesting information. I think it's useless knowledge, or something like that. You can find it. So the same is true. I don't know if you're aware of this. Recently, in the last few years, Harvard and MIT pioneered this. They began putting their entire curriculums, their entire information that they would teach in the universities online for free. Open freeware. Which everyone shocked everyone, because this was supposed to be so-called. You go to Harvard to get Harvard's level knowledge, or MIT and so on. And basically, if you read the rationalization, it was very simple, that information wants to be free, as the internet pioneers have always said. And Harvard made it clear that the real reason that people pay top dollar to go to get an education is not for the information, but for the connections. Because it's most likely that your class will be major CEOs in the country. And even though it's a good education, but they don't see the education as being proprietary, and it's really the environment. To study on campus, there you have to pay top dollar. But the information itself they're making available. So it's interesting that how everything is twisted. Where once upon a time getting information, corporate trade secrets and stuff was the key thing. Today's the opposite, is to find out what's right, what's relevant, and what isn't relevant. You could be sitting right now on a piece of information that would have been worth millions and millions of dollars. You don't even know it, because it's buried among so much. On the other side of things, as I said, what it has done to our lives, well, I have not seen any progress. I'm old enough to tell you that before the information revolution, or at least the internet dimension of it, people were just as miserable today as they are then. So I haven't seen anything change. If anything, I would say probably gotten worse. Because, number one, access and availability creates the illusion of power. And when you're not in power and you think you're in power, it's worse than when you don't think you're in power. The fact that we have the ability to just press a button and access so much creates the illusion that everything is working out. All I got to do is instant gratification. It's easy to get. So it's almost like an escape from having to really look at yourself. All you have to do is a little Twitter, a little Facebook. You always have your mobile. That's one thing. The second thing is that it's the illusion that what you acquire in life and the experiences you have make you a happier person. Happiness was never a result of acquisition. Happiness was in the domain of people who were at peace with themselves, whatever they had or didn't have. The illusion that we live in a highly, very supersonic marketing age, where we're taught that if you don't, you have to have this and you have to have that. The more information you see, the more hungry you become, and the more inadequate you feel. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with becoming a more wholesome human being. Because information at the end of the day, and all the technologies, and all the tools that we have, are simply a tool chest. So let me ask you something. If someone had a hammer and a screwdriver in a tool chest, and someone else has 1,000 or 10,000 types of hammers and screwdrivers and tools, how does that change the person? It just gives them more ability to knock in more nails and to use those tools. It all depends on the person. The tool chest does not make you a better mechanic. All it does is gives you tools. If you don't know how to be a mechanic, you won't be able to be a mechanic with millions of tools. And if you know how to be one, you'll figure it out even with a stone. So if you know what you're doing, the tools obviously can enhance. So I can go on and on. I don't think I have to elaborate that to a sophisticated crowd like this, that the technology age of revolution, information age, is not our panacea and stairway to heaven. It's a blessing in many ways, but it could also be a curse, like anything, like any deluge, if it's not properly harnessed and accessed. Not to use a very extreme example, the Germans were the most sophisticated of all nations 60 years ago. And then they turned all their science and wisdom and philosophy and so-called culture to brutal ends, where they figured out efficient ways to kill people, how many people you can kill in an hour. Doctors, experiments. So you can take technology and advance and turn it around, and it becomes the most beyond, subhuman behavior. So it's important to just know that. A human being is a human being. Nothing will ever replace a nurturing mother. 9 months in the womb that you spend when you're a child is necessary. And then when you emerge, you want to have healthy parents. You don't want technology taking over. Technology maybe comes later in life when we need tools to try to make it, but never ever let that replace the things that matter most, which is love, truth, God, soul, real relationships, friendships. You ever seen two people become better friends because they have technology? If you love someone and you're a friend, technology allows you to access them easier. You can write them a quick note. You can see them even if they're 1,000 miles away, Skype and so on. But technology should create friendships. So Facebook has friends. I should know. I've reached the 5,000 limit on the personal thing. So now you got the likes and whatever they call it. First they call it fans, now it's likes. And all these words. Now there's very innocent in a way, innocuous words like friend and so on, but it does really belittle. It does ultimately devalue what friendship is when Facebook came around. And I'm not one of these fire and brimstone guys against technology. I use it all the time, but I'm not deluded by it in the sense where I see it as a tool to get the message out there, and it's a great tool, and it changes dramatically how you can communicate and the cost, basically zero cost, etc. But to suddenly replace and say Facebook has now monopolized what a friend is, I don't know. Not, out of the 5,000, I don't know if I know 50 of them. Now what I mean, I'm not trying to insult anyone that I'm a friend with. A friend means it's just a technical word. Google Plus is calling it circle of circles, right? What are they calling it? Everybody's got their words, and it's a great name, friend. But a real friend is something much deeper. There was someone who once came to see the Rebbe, and he didn't even know why he was there. He was just, someone suggested to him to go see the Rebbe, so he was there, and he's sitting there, and the Rebbe says, "So, what can I do for you?" She said, "I don't really know. They told me that when I come to New York, I must come see you. You're a holy man, but I really have no reason to really be here." So the Rebbe said, "Listen, I'm not comfortable with someone sitting here not wanting to be here. Since the divine providence, maybe you could find, maybe there's something that's on your mind." She says, "Yeah, maybe you can tell me who you are. Well, why what's your role? Why do people admire you? Why do the people so value you?" So the Rebbe responded, "I'm a friend." So the guy looked at the Rebbe very surprisingly, "A friend? What's so big about a friend? I have a lot of friends." So he said, "Let me explain to you what a friend is, and then tell me how many friends you have." And he said, "A friend is someone," and listen to this definition, "who you can speak to as if you're speaking to yourself. That there's no fear of judgment, of critique, of lack of confidentiality. Someone that you can completely speak to without any defenses, just openly, without anything between you and that person." And then he looked at this fellow, and the Rebbe said to him, "So how many friends do you have?" So he said, "If that's the definition, I don't have any such friends. I don't even believe there is such a friend like that." The Rebbe said, "Well, I find that sad, because maybe there aren't many, but that's the type of friend you want to have. And if you lower your standard, that a friend is someone that, whatever that lower standard is, you're undermining and basically undermining and undercutting your own possibilities." And I have no doubt that we all have the capacity to be such friends, and we have capacity to find someone that's a friend like that. However, we live in a world called the rat race, dog eats dog, and we've developed all the sophisticated defense mechanisms and armor that we need to protect ourselves because we've been hurt. But look at children. I always use children as an example because they're the purest you. They're the purest version of ourselves. Because they're not yet jaded and they haven't yet developed man-made machines and man-made structures and defense mechanisms. Children just have a natural seamlessness, a natural flow. What you see is what you get. Duplicity doesn't yet exist. There's no agenda yet. Try to use somebody. Children learn that from whom? From adults. So, if you want to see your purest self, that's what we really are like. But then we develop all these, as I said, sophisticated defense mechanisms that come to play in our lives all the time, especially when we're in a place where we can be vulnerable. Relationships. You meet people. You show them your real face. No, because if you feel if you do that, people are not going to understand, or they won't relate to you, or they'll misjudge you, and so on and so forth. So, this information revolution is a deluge. It's like a flood, and it has to be seen in context and seen as a blessing that it is, but only if you're in control of it. Like in any type of addiction, you want to know who's the master and who's the slave. If the information is the master and you're the slave to your gadgets, then it is no different than any addiction. If you're the master and your tool chests are tools that help you be a better person because you have focus and you have goals, and you have objective, you have a mission, then it's a tremendous tool. So that's what I would like to discuss. And what really was the catalyst for it all was actually a commentary, Rashi, citing the Talmud, in this week's chapter of all chapters. This week's chapter. What does it say in this week's chapter? Now, these two chapters, it's a double chapter that we read, double portion that we read this week, this Shabbos. It's called Tazria Metzora. Tazria Metzora. And they're both in the book of Leviticus, which in itself, most of Leviticus, as opposed to the other parts of the Torah, consist of laws. And most of the laws are not relevant today, in the physical sense. Most of them are applicable to the time of the temple, laws of purity and impurity, laws of the offerings, and so on. And though there are spiritual lessons and spiritual eternal messages in all of it, but the physical manifestation, especially of these two chapters, does not exist. The primary theme in both these chapters is the leper. The second chapter is called Metzora. Metzora literally means the leper. But this is not regular leprosy. As Maimonides writes, this was a leprosy that does not exist today. Not a medical illness. It's a spiritual illness. He writes this was a miraculous type of illness that was a warning for people who slandered and gossiped others. Gossip. That's what he writes. Based on the Talmud and based on this. So there's a whole elaborate system of laws here of different signs of certain leprosy symptoms, of blotches and scars and so on, that appear, as Maimonides and others explain, that this was not a natural thing. This was in the time of the Talmud, the time of the temple, and before that, a spiritual illness that doesn't exist today. And it was a direct result of people's gossiping about each other. Lashon hara. So we have an entire chapter that is not relevant in the physical sense. As I said, all these laws, the offerings, the way we heal, are not applicable again in the material, in the physical sense of the word. But what jumped out at me was particularly one line. One line. The line goes like this. It says, in part of the process of healing the Metzora, one of the aspects of the healing is by bringing an offering of 2 birds. And the Talmud explains all the details of the healing, which I'm going to not focus on all of them, but this one about the birds. Why birds? So here's the interesting statement. Listen to this. Why birds? This is because the lesions of tzarat, which are the lesions that are of this spiritual illness, come as a result of gossip, which is done by chattering. Therefore, this person is required to bring birds for his ritual purification, which twitter constantly with chirping sounds. This is a Rashi written over 1,000 years ago, citing a Talmud written almost 2,000 years ago. The word is twitter. Twitter constantly with chirping sounds. So that's what jumped out at me. I said Twitter and the Metzora. There you go. Now, as you know, Torah was never copyrighted, so there's no patents involved. The Torah was given in no man's land in the wilderness, and intentionally because they did not want anyone to claim rights over it. This way, it's knowledge, it's truth, it's God's word that everyone has access to. You know the classic Woody Allen joke, where the guy comes to the rabbi, "Rabbi, can you teach me the truths of life?" So he says, "Of course, the Torah. Will you teach it to me?" "Absolutely." "How much will it cost?" "How could I charge you?" God didn't charge us when He gave us the Torah. Moses didn't charge us, so it's free. So he was absolutely amazed. What do you get for free today? Let alone the truths of existence, the truths of life. They sit down, and this is of course Woody Allen's sardonic and cynical conclusion. They sit down, and it's all in Hebrew. And the other rabbi finally has the punchline. The rabbi says, "Well, Hebrew lessons will be $10,000," which is the classic stereotype, and unfortunately, often that's what religion has become: bureaucratic and financial and administrative, and lost its very often its spiritual touch, the soul. So the Torah was given to us without any type of copyrights and patents. So Twitter can rest assured that even though Rashi wrote this in the Talmud, no one's going to come and sue them for the name. But the interesting thing is, after the initial reaction, Twitter its name implies exactly that, chirping constantly, twittering constantly, which, if anything, captures in one word the information age. Constant twittering. I don't know about yourself here, you're all probably so pure and soulful, but there are many people in this world that cannot stand very long alone without getting fidgety and having to touch their mobile device and check it. You know? I must say, you've been very disciplined. I've seen nobody do that right here. But a phone can ring any moment, you know how it goes, and who knows, it may be the most important call you're ever going to get. But that's how it is. Most of us are not able to stay away from. I sit at meetings, and I find it so rude. But this has become now tradition. You can sit at a board meeting, you can sit at any meeting, and people start texting. You know, they've even mastered the art of maintaining eye contact while you're texting someone else. You know, there are people who are able to. It's called multitasking. Now, I understand that it's efficient. And today you're able to get it from, it's like the guy, they asked him, why are you climbing Mount Everest? He said, because it's there. You know, we all know there was once a time we didn't have such access to information. You had to wait till you got home, till you checked your email. There was a time there wasn't email either. You had to wait till the mail came. And there was a time that wasn't there either. But once Mount Everest is there, we have to climb it. Now that it's accessible, now you can't be left behind. So you have to have that access. And just it continues to roll. Fine. So, but in a way, what it captures, the twittering, chirping constantly, that name captures it better than anything. You know, Facebook, whatever it means, Facebook, pictures, book, whatever, however that name developed. But Twitter is like the verb, and you tweet and you Twitter. So I could not ignore this serendipity, what do we call it? This coincidence. I don't even know if it's a coincidence. This hashgacha pratis. So I was thinking about it. And then what struck me was to go a little deeper. 1 second. Before we get into the information of the whole Twitter revolution, let's talk about this verse. Why are the birds responsible? Why are they brought an offering? Because human beings are chattering about each other and gossiping and slandering and lashon hara. So just because birds chatter and Twitter incessantly, why are they suddenly the victims of our chatter? And they're brought as an offering. You know, that's what struck me here. And secondly, birds are naturally created to Twitter. We're not necessarily created that way. That's what birds do. That's how God made them. Now, what they say exactly, I have no idea. But they're twittering a lot. You know, you hear them in the mornings. Sometimes you walk even in Manhattan. You stop, even though it's hard to hear the sounds, natural sounds around here. But, sometimes these birds, it sounds like some type of major concert going on. You ever hear like thousands of them? When the sun goes down, often, sometimes in dawn, sometimes just the middle of the day. If you pay attention, you suddenly hear it. Crickets are also similar, but we don't really hear crickets here in the city, do we? You do? Human crickets. I'm talking about real crickets. You do? Really? Okay. Not like in the country. Okay. Listen, I love New York. I love New York too, but not for its natural beauty. Let's put it this way. So the question is, so why exactly is the Torah it's one thing human beings are twittering constantly and talking about each other, but why are we bringing the birds into this? The birds didn't do anything wrong. So let's address that before we get into the whole information thing. I'll just throw out one more thing about the twittering. Information is also, interestingly, I don't usually do this, but once in a while, just to get up to speed what's going on in the media world, you watch, let's say, a cable station, 24-hour news stations, CNN or Fox or MSNBC, and they say breaking news, they have the breaking stories. And then, because this is not an hour news show or half-hour news show, this is like a whole day, they have to fill it up. So suddenly you have helicopters and bloggers and tweeters, whatever you call it, tweeters, and everything filling us in on every stupid detail about a breaking story. It's ad nauseum. And sometimes I watch it I cannot stop laughing. Some things are, God forbid, tragedy. But let's not talk about tragedy. Michael Jackson's death. So they were marching on on television, and they go from one station to the next. his plastic surgeon, his ex-plastic surgeon, the guy that worked with him 20 years ago. Everybody's analyzing how he died, what he died, and so on. I understand he's a celebrity, and we are all paparazzi generation, and so on. But there's a certain obscenity, actually. We're like addicted to this constant information that has absolutely no value. Like, what difference is it going to make at the end of the day? But what else do we have to do? It's not like so the stations give us a steady diet to keep us filled. And, when news is like a soap opera, it's even more exciting. A soap opera is a soap opera. You got to produce it. Here, the news itself, there's like no better story. It's happening before us. And, so I wondered to myself, are we better people when we know all the details of the story? Or is it just the voyeurism within us, feeding us into this constant television age, and so on? Now, we're all guilty of this, I myself included. Sometimes I watch it, and it's like, and then I stop myself and say, so what exactly is intriguing here? And then when I take off for a week, I went to Cape Cod for Passover, and I didn't see anything, no New York Times, nothing. I think I was far healthier. I came back, I wasn't even interested. You got to keep up to certain things where people think you became a caveman. But that's just for the show. But reality, it doesn't really help me in my life, per se. Now, I understand if it's your business and you need it for certain things, we're not talking about that. But most of it is useless knowledge. And then the question is, what does it really do to the value of a conversation? When is the last time we had a real heart-to-heart, hour, 2-hour, extensive conversation with a friend? That's becoming a rare commodity today. The patience, ability to experience silence, just to be able to go and be absorbed with your own thoughts and feelings and not have to right away text and they say, I'm in a bad mood or a good mood today. Again, I want to qualify this. I'm not trying to knock all this technology, but it's important sometimes to step away from it and just see, who are you separate from your environment, separate from your tool chest and from your gadgets? If you want to get control of your life, that's how you have to look at yourself. You cannot define yourself by your arsenal. You have to define yourself by who you are. So let's go back to the Metzora and why the Torah feels it's so important. Many ways, as I was reading this, even though the Metzora, as I said, this leper doesn't exist today in the physical sense, but its message about information overload and gossip and so on is far more relevant today than it was then. Because 2,000 years ago, how far could gossip go already? You had a friend, another friend, a little shtetl, and that was it. You'd have to rent a whole bunch of camels and donkeys to get this gossip to go to another town. Today, that's not the case. Today, you want to say something, you want to badmouth someone, maliciously or not, intentionally or not, it's a joke. You just write it and it's out there and that's it. The footprints, as they say. Anything you've written, any stupid little email can be held against you because it's very easy to search. I did a search a few times, and it's unbelievable, kind of embarrassing things you can come up with. And I was someone I know, I haven't seen for several years. I searched for them, and I found he's somewhere in Israel, and I see he's renting his apartment, and I call him up, and I could tell him about his life. He was like shocked. He said, "How do you know this?" So I said, "Well, everybody knows if they want. They just type in that name." So, what is this doing to real relationships? This, I believe, is the theme in many ways of this chapter and its relevance to us. So let's go back to the birds, the Twitter, Metzora and the Twitter. Okay, kind of interesting, the mix, right? The two come together. And I look, by the way, in all the translations in English, they all use Twitter. There's chirp and there's Twitter. In Hebrew, let's get the Hebrew word for it. You want to know the Hebrew word for Twitter? Mitzaftzifim. Tziftzuf. It sounds like Twitter. Tziftzuf, 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 like that. Imagine doing that for a long time. That's what it sounds like.
What's the verse?
The verse is Leviticus 14. 14. 7. 14:7. Just looking for the Hebrew original. 1 second. Yeah. I'm sorry, 14:4. Shemis mefaspesin. Actually, sometimes it says Mitzaftzufin, sometimes it says Mefasfus. Mefatfufin. Betziftzuf koil. Yeah. And so I'll ask one final question. That's a connection. A person's chattering and twittering with his mouth about others, and being that birds twitter, that's where you bring a bird as an offering. It's like a weird connection. As I said before, what are the birds responsible here? So let's begin with number one, with our relationship with the world around us. In the Torah we have the concept of animal offerings, which the same question can be asked. Why is an animal responsible for our problems? Offer yourself. You did something wrong, offer yourself. Why are you bringing an animal offering? So the Ramban Nachmanides says something very powerful, and I'll explain it in a moment. He says that when a person brought an offering, they were supposed to imagine as if they were being offered, and God in His compassion said you can transfer it to something that belongs to you instead, to a piece of property, to your animal. But it's really you that is being offered here, your flesh and blood, because it was you that made the mistake. And what's offered in the temple on the altar is the blood and the fat, because they represent passion and indulgence, which is the root of most indiscretions. Passion and indulgence. So fat is indulgence, and blood is passion. When a person is selfish and greedy and is easily able to talk bad mouth someone else, it's because they're not thinking. They think only about themselves, what I need right now. They're not sensitive. No one wants to be talked about. Why are you talking about somebody else? It's because you're indulging in yourself. So the offerings are essentially an expression, a way of transferring and going through. And if a person did not personally do tshuva, in other words, you can't just bring an offering and go home and sleep. You have to cry over the fact that an animal had to bring an offering in your stead, in your place, and you have to work hard to actually make sure that you never make that mistake again. So the question is asked: why are the animals responsible? Why should we use an innocent animal to protect, to atone for our sins? So this question goes a little deeper into the whole issue of our relationship with, as I said, with the world around us. The same question you can ask is about basically the human consumption. We consume mineral, vegetable, animal. Even if you're a vegetarian, even if you're vegan, so you're consuming mineral. What right do we have to consume another form of life for our own sustenance? So I know some people have a problem with killing animals and consuming animals. Some people have a problem not with animals, but vegetables fine. Some people, even eggs they also will not eat, and so on, and fish. But the real question is, it should bother us not that we should touch any life for our own sustenance. What right do we have to take an apple off a tree, off its own so-called destiny, its own trajectory? Maybe apples have relationships we can't relate to. So it's true, yes, an animal, when you kill an animal, it sheds blood, it cries out. But who says that when you tear off a plant from its stem, from its roots, you're not causing it pain just because it doesn't cry like we cry, because there's no physical blood? Maybe it lives in its own world. It has a relationship with its with other plants, and the same thing with mineral. So of course the answer will be, well, what am I supposed to do if I'm not going to eat mineral, vegetable, or animal? I'm going to die. In other words. Animal you won't eat because that bothers you, but vegetable because you have no choice. Judaism does not find that to be an adequate answer. And the Arizal, the Holy Arizal, actually is the one that asked this question. And his answer is unbelievably profound and simple as well. And it's a whole philosophy of life. And I'll just, before I get to the explanation, let me just share a few anecdotes. When one of the Rebbes was a little child, he was walking with his father in a garden, in a meadow. And while they were speaking, the little child tore off a leaf from a tree and began to rub it. Tore off a leaf and just rubbed it. And his father rebuked him, reprimanded him, and said, what right do you have to tear off a little leaf of a tree just to rub for no purpose? This is a sacred world in which we live. This is God's plan. You just took a leaf of a tree for no reason. How do you know what you're tampering with? Maybe you've changed the course of history. You hear the sensitivity, one leaf of a tree. We're not even talking now animals and hurting someone intentionally. And this became like a philosophical principle of what we call Bal Tashchis. It's actually a crime in the Torah, not rabbinics, in the written Torah. It's called Bal Tashchis. You shall not destroy. You shall not destroy the world in which you create. This isn't just a nice thing to be environmentalist and protect the environment. It happens to be actually God's world. You desecrate God when you desecrate His world. So no one has to preach to anyone that knows Judaism and Torah about environmentalism. Because it's not just because it makes us feel good that we're environmental, we protect our environment and endangered species. And it's not just for our own good because we destroy the world at which we live. It's God's world. A similar statement is made, for example, about a person's self-mutilation is forbidden in the Torah. You're not allowed to mutilate yourself. Scar yourself, wound yourself. And the commentaries explain why, because your body is not yours, it's God's. God gave it to you on loan, a lease, for your life to watch and protect it. So it's not just that you could say, I can't hurt someone else. Well, you have no right to touch someone else. You also have no right to touch yourself. Just for no reason, for your own indulgence. It's not yours. Your body you didn't create. It came to you, was given to you as a gift. So that's the extent of Jewish sensitivity, Torah sensitivity to the world around us. Even a leaf of a tree. So now we say, in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, it says the following. There are two opinions. They ask the question, why were Adam and Eve created last in the Garden of Eden? You all know the story of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is actually the last day of creation. It's not the beginning. The sixth day of creation is when we honor the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah. So the question is asked, why were Adam and Eve created last? Day one was, let there be light. Day two, the division of the heaven and the higher waters and the lower. Day three, vegetation. Day four, the luminaries, celestial bodies. Day five, the animals. Day six, man, meaning man and woman. So Talmud gives two contradictory answers. The first answer it gives is because the human being is this crown jewel of creation, and the special guest, you don't invite a special guest and then set the table. First you set the table and then you invite the guest. Special guest comes to your home. You don't start setting the table when he's sitting there, or she. You set the table. So God prepared the world and then brought the special guest, human being. And the second answer given is seemingly absolutely contradicts the first answer. Second answer says, in case you ever get haughty or arrogant, remember, human being, that you were created last, that even the lowly insect, even a yitush, a lowly insect was created before you. So what are we, a crown jewel, or even lower than a lowly insect? And the answer obviously depends on how we behave. Free will. If we elevate the world, we use our abilities, our strengths, to dominate over the universe and make it a better place, then with the crown jewel, with a guest, special guest. But if we desecrate the world, and we use our strengths to destroy nature around us, then we are told you're even lower than an insect, because an insect has never defied God's plan. Every insect on earth, every creature on earth follows the plan like a clock. They can't destroy the world, animals, but they also can't make it better. We have the power to do both. So though we're weaker than many creatures out there, what we've learned with our ingenuity, how to tame the elements, how to destroy, how to kill other creatures. And sometimes we create civilization, and sometimes we create destruction. So there's a Hasidic anecdote that says when a wicked person walks on the street, the cobblestones cry out, "What right do you have to walk on me? I've never defied. I've never transgressed. What right do you have to take your wicked feet and tread on me?" This is the relationship we have with the world around us. And now let's go to the Arizal. So the Arizal explains, why is it that God created us in a way that we consume? Our sustenance is dependent on consuming other forms of life, mineral, vegetable, animal. at least mineral and vegetable. And he answers it in the on the verse in the book of Deuteronomy, which says, "Ki lo yalechem levada yichya adam." Not on bread alone does man live, does a human being live. Ki im al meitzeh pi Hashem yichya adam. He lives on the spark of the divine spark that is inside the food, inside the bread. So the Rizal explains that the world was created by God for a purpose. To use a Kabbalistic metaphor, the purpose is refining and elevating the sparks. What are sparks? Sparks are spiritual opportunities that are scattered in a very disorganized way all over the world. Each of us is allocated with a certain amount of sparks that we have to elevate in our lives. Where are these sparks? They are the coordinates of your life. Where you've been led. Your personality type. The places that you've lived and you've traveled to. The people you know, the opportunities that come your way. Each of us has our own particular journey, trajectory. That is a mystery to many of us. But you're there for a reason, because that's where your sparks are. So why some of us were blessed with certain skills and meet certain people and go to certain places, because in those areas, that's where our particular spiritual opportunities are there. And our job is to elevate them. And that's why God created a symbiotic world. We're not self-contained creatures. We are dependent on each other and on mineral, vegetable, and animal to live. But we have the choice. You can consume other parts of the world, tread on them, and use them for destructive purposes, and then you're lower than an insect because you've destroyed. Or, and that's the purpose, you can elevate it. So you're walking in a field. You see a beautiful apple tree. You're very thirsty. It's a hot day. And the apple starts talking to you. It's very juicy, and it says, why don't you bite into me? Or you think it's talking to you. And you rip off the apple from the tree, and you just bite into it, consume it, and then you self-indulge in the apple, and then you go ahead and hurt somebody. The apple can then call you to judgment. What right did you have to tear me off a tree for me to become part of your flesh and blood so you could hurt another person? Now I'm a partner in your crime. I was sitting peacefully on the tree without hurting anyone. Yes, I wasn't making the world better. I can't say that. Nature makes it better. There's a certain natural process, whether it's photosynthesis or other things, the balance. But I was definitely not destroying. Now, if you take that same apple and you use the energy and strength, sensitivity, to help another person, to change the world for the better in some way, then the apple thanks you and says, because hanging on a tree, I never could have achieved that. And now I've become part of doing something greater. That's the human being's ability. That's why it says right in the beginning of the Bible, I'm giving you the blessing. You're not going to be the most powerful creature, but you will be the most dominant one. There are many animals that are far stronger in pure horsepower than we are. But we have ingenuity. We've learned to harness, we've learned to tame, we've learned to control, we've developed weapons and so on. Technology. So what do we do with this? So the Torah says, be responsible. I'm giving you pru, milas haaretz. Multiply, have children, v'kivshua, and conquer the world. But conquer it not for self-indulgent purposes, conquer it for me, for God. Sanctify it, turn it into a spiritual world. Because that apples and trees and minerals, vegetables and animals cannot do. And then the whole entire world thanks you because you've helped elevate it all. So like it says in some Torah books, it says, minerals are consumed by vegetables, and vegetables are consumed by animals, and animals are consumed by people. And interestingly, scientifically, the more something is consumed, the more it multiplies. There are far more vegetables in this world than there are animals, because they're consumed by that many more. And there's a balance that's necessary. We all know when a certain species goes extinct, it will cause usually an overflow of the animals that it would eat or it would consume, and that would cause its own damage. So there's a whole ecosystem that's in place. So this goes back to the result. So we have a relationship with the world around us. And yes, we impact the world around us, even the animals and the minerals and vegetables around us. And just to give you an example, it says in the time of the flood, why were the animals also killed? Human beings were the ones that brought Molei Aretz Shachas. The whole world was corrupt and filled with crime. Why the animals? Because humans, it said, corrupted the animals too. They also became corrupt. The only ones they couldn't corrupt were the fish in the sea, so that's why the fish in the sea were left alone, because we can't corrupt them, because we can't live in the sea. The sea and the fish are under the surface, so we can't corrupt them. Now, I always thought about this statement as, it's interesting, but recently I have something here that I was made aware of something that made me appreciate this thing with the flood. The couple I know in the city, they told me they have a few dogs, and one of the dogs was acting up. So they have today, besides veterinarians, they also have dog therapists. They actually do. So they took their dog to a therapist, and they came back after an hour, and the therapist said to them that the dog is exhibiting a lot of neurosis, and as a result, he wants to know what kind of home is his dog living in. And he began interviewing the couple, and lo and behold, which I could have told them, they have plenty of domestic issues, this couple. And it basically, the dog living in that environment has assumed dysfunctional tendencies. It's aggressive, it's moody, and so on and so forth. So I saw right there how we can corrupt even animals, which also means we can also elevate them. So the concept of animal sacrifice or animal offering, the actual word for in Hebrew, this book of Leviticus is called Sefer HaKarbonos. Carbon does not mean sacrifice. Carbon means to get closer to. It comes from the word kiruv. Our purpose, our mission in life is to elevate and bring this world closer to its source. We live in an agnostic universe that can deceive itself into thinking it's an independent reality on its own. We do whatever we want. We indulge. What we have to do, human cognizance, human awareness, human consciousness, is meant to elevate the entire world, the animal and vegetable and mineral kingdoms, to a higher state of awareness. So when we sin, when we do something wrong, it's not just us. We're causing damage to the entire world. And that's why we bring an offering. Not because we're taking an innocent animal, we're taking an animal that is representative of a part of who we are, and we are saying, this is representing me. So the idea of the relationship of the Metzora and the birds is much more profound than we think. Why did God make birds that chirp? More importantly, why did He make us as humans hear that chirping? Now I know this question is not asked in science, but Torah asks us questions. You see, science studies phenomenon and tries to understand the reason for it. But the science will never ask a question why birds, they ask a question why birds chirp, but not necessarily why we hear the chirping. But the Torah asks such questions because the Torah is built on the assumption there's a God, and nothing happens by accident. There are many things that we don't hear. There are many sounds in the universe that we can't even hear. There are certain decibels that we're unable to hear. Why did God make us hear chirping of birds? Because the world is a lesson to us. Everything you see around you, from my flesh I behold God. From nature we understand things. Now I know we all love nature. Well, I guess most people do. There's a certain harmony. These nature shows are very interesting. I'm always intrigued by them. And I always think there's something missing after every nature show. You know what's missing? What lesson does it have for us in our lives? The story of, let's say, snow leopards, or these different species. I mean, it's fascinating what the camera is able to see today. Unbelievable. I mean, it's almost like a miracle. You can't imagine how they even got a camera to zoom in and capture that whole life. I mean, everyone saw the March of the Penguins. But you see these shows all the time. Nature shows, there's National Geographic, there's the what are they called? A few other animal something planet. Planet Earth, etc., etc. I mean, it's fascinating. And it's like miraculous to see the intricate details, the magic of one species, let alone, and then you start seeing all of them. And it's just fascinating. The seasons, what the cameras are able to see today, underwater, I don't know how they managed to figure out how those little swamps where they can see how the hippopotamuses are eating crocodiles. I mean, like, and what they were not, and the crocodile and the hippopotamus, like, Ms. the cameraman, like, where are they exactly? And these aren't fabricated scenes. It just fascinates me. I mean, I'd love to see a story about how this is made. The making of these films. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't even know how they figure it out. Where are they? You ever see these like swamps in Africa where they have it? I mean, it's pretty interesting. But it cost a lot of money just to produce those type of shows. But they're fascinating because they resonate with us. You know why they resonate with us? Not just because we're getting a glimpse into the mystery of life and nature, because nature is us. And that's what I would love to do, is add a half hour to that. Like, what's the lesson in that to us? Every animal has a lesson. Why certain animals survive this way, how they protect their young. Each animal has its own set of rules. I just was watching otters. Otters spend the first year or two of their lives, baby otters, their mothers or parents touch them something like 1,000 times an hour. They're always touching, because that creates a sensitivity, a nurturing, a love. Something that Twitter and technology can't exactly do. Yeah, but otters aren't interested in Twitter anyway, so don't worry about it. So the point I'm making is that nature, it resonates with us just like children resonate with us, because it is us. That's how the Judaism, especially mysticism, sees the world. Everything is a microcosm. You see something, you're seeing yourself. And God is doing it in a very interesting way, because you would never see it on yourself. So God shows it to you through someone else or through something else. And you look at it and you don't think it's you, but the reason it resonates is because it's you. And it's a lesson for you, which is what the Baal Shem Tov says, everything you see is a mirror. Flaws. Most of us cannot see our own flaws. So you know what God does? He sends you other people and you're able to very, very quickly pick up flaws. Why do you see those flaws? Because you recognize them. You don't think it's you, but it's you. That's why you're able to see it. And the same thing is positive things. Things that resonate, things that really make you crazy, is probably because you have something of that inside yourself. So the world is a mirror. What do they call it? The world of life is an oyster. The world is a mirror, and everything is a lesson for us. A person who's truly in touch, he sees everything happening as a lesson. Now, obviously, don't take this overboard where you walk down the street, you're going to lose sight of reality. You start seeing everything. You got to have a little balance as well. I once said this in a class, and the guy was calling me up every morning and finding messages for his life from the New York Times every morning. I said, I told you nature, I didn't tell you the New York Times. The New York Times, not necessarily everything is relevant. That's man-made. I'm talking about what's God made, not what's man-made. So the fact of the matter is, and this is the fascinating thing, and look how it changes the whole perspective. See, when you read it on an ostensible level, birds chatter and Twitter, and that's why, because a human being chattered and twittered about another person. So we bring a bird and kill a bird to atone for your sin. What kind of connection is that? But when you think, after this long introduction, that there's no such thing as accidents. Birds twittering and chirping is actually healthy for them. That's probably their way of communicating, their way of loving, their way of warning each other, I guess their way of socializing. That's what it sounds like to me. They say King Solomon was able to understand the language of the birds and animals. I, for one, am not able to. Has anyone here been able to decipher some of these sounds? But the point is, there is a lesson. They are incessant chatterers. They're reminding us of our own Twitter addictions. That's what they're doing. And you could say, well, why is the bird responsible? The bird is not. The bird is fine. They were created that, but they are also part of our world. So we have to have a reminder of what we look like. So if you really want to know what you sometimes look like, again, I'm not saying anyone in this room, but people who just are information addicts, listen to the birds. And that's what the reminder of the Metzora is. You did not know how to control yourself. So here's the birds, they will remind you. And they become part of, you've caused them to be part of your issue. So the fact that they do it, as I said, I want to qualify again. The birds chattering and twittering was never seen as a sin. First of all, animals don't sin, because they do exactly what they were created to do. But the lesson and their connection with us is vital. So, in that sense, what we learn from the Metzora, which is also, by the way, an acronym for Moitzi Shem Ra. Metzora, Moitzi Shem Ra, is someone who slanders and gives a bad name, bad mouth somebody else. And in Jewish laws, there's actually entire laws about this. This doesn't only mean saying slander, meaning something false. Gossip doesn't have to be false. Slander is libel. You lie about somebody. You make up a story and you turn it into a reality which never happened. Gossip means even if it's true, who gave you the job to start sharing this with others? Why did you appoint yourself as being the Twitterer and the chirper, the bird that has to carry this news everywhere? Why are you doing that? What benefit do you have? What joy do you have? Why does it human beings have this weird nature? They just sometimes enjoy talking about somebody else. I'm sure we've all been guilty about it in some way. And then you think about it, step back. Why? So there's the joke that goes, I'm not speaking Lashon Hara, we're talking about how to help the person. I wish that were true. That every time we spoke about somebody, we're really thinking how to help them. If you really want to know how to help them, you'd call them up, sit down with them, and figure out what their life is like, and so on. But there's something we like about it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's part of the voyeurism I mentioned before. Maybe just part of, maybe makes us feel a little better, because we don't feel so good about ourselves, then we say, oh, well, I'm not so bad, look at everybody else, they're also pretty bad. That's one of my theories on the matter. I don't know what it is exactly. Some call it something like Schadenfreude, which is like, you gain nothing from it, but you have some pleasure when another person fails. Anybody has theories on this matter? So it's one thing if you gain, so you could say, listen, I'm competing with someone else. If I gain, if that person gains, he takes something away from me. But what happens if nothing is taken away from you? Just to gossip about somebody that you get no benefit. We have this capacity. And if you get to the root of it, the capacity comes from our own self-indulgence, lack of sensitivity, like many things we do, out of negligence, out of not really thinking. How many people we may have hurt by just saying something, we didn't even mean it, just blurted out something. I can't say I'm guiltless of this crime, I try to keep it under control, but sometimes it happens. Somebody can just push your buttons. You blurt out things for no particular reason. So we're not human beings that are perfect. That's why we have these lessons. But it teaches us about communication, measuring our words. Imagine you had to pay for every word you utter in this world. Imagine you run out of words after a while. You're given a quota. You can speak 1 million words in your lifetime. What do you think would happen? That would be interesting. We take for granted that God blessed us with a mouth. When Moses was chosen by God, Moses says, Lo ish dvarim, I'm not a man of no words. Why are you choosing me to communicate your truth? I'm a man of no words. So you know what God answers him? Who gives a man a mouth to speak? It's me. But we think our mouths belong to ourselves, so we can say whatever we like. And we can endlessly speak without ever being charged for it. But it's not correct. Words are also sacred. And words can kill. They say about Lashon Hara, the Talmud says, that it kills 3 people. The person who speaks, the person who listens, and the person who's spoken about. 3 people it kills. So words are powerful tools, because we can use words to express love, to express warmth, to help people. And we can use words to hurt people. So just like the apple on the tree, our words are also part of the blessing that was given to us, and we also have the choice. So we have these entire chapters that talk about an illness that would manifest in the olden days for somebody who was twittering too long. Today, maybe the illness is worse because we don't see it. We don't see necessarily in any obvious way damage done by our overconsumption of knowledge, our information revolution. We don't see it. It takes years for these things to have an impact. Who is it that said that people read more and more today about less and less? So it's not that today we have a lower rate of illiteracy, it's only that today illiterate people know how to read. This is the great Oscar Wilde. I'm not suggesting he's a paragon exactly of a model, but nevertheless it's a good line. So I think it's about looking at ourselves. It's more than just the speech. It's looking at ourselves and being more sensitive human beings. So the Twitter Metzora connection is a reminder. It's a reminder of our own lives, a reminder of our own gifts, a reminder of our own responsibilities. Wherever we go, there are sparks, as I said, waiting for us. Right here in this room tonight, anyone out there, you have sparks allocated to you. There's that beautiful story with the Baal Shem Tov. I use it very often when I travel and go to places I've never been before. And you think about it, it's like really very powerful. And many of us suffer from what we call boredom, right? My life is monotonous. I keep doing the same thing again and again. My results are the same as well. So there's the Baal Shem Tov story. He once sent students of his on a mission. And after they returned, the Baal Shem Tov wanted to know everything that happened. So they told him, we went and we fulfilled the mission. But that was not enough. He began to focus on, he wanted to know how they traveled, and where they traveled, and where they stopped, and where they went, and so on. Which was, to them, was a little odd, because what difference does it make? We went this way or that way. We ended up at the destination, we did our job, and we move on. No, but he insisted. Okay, so since he insisted, they began to share with them. They stopped at this town, and where did you sleep that night? Well, one night we couldn't get to town, so we slept at the side of the road. In the morning we woke up, and what happened in the morning? We washed our hands, we said our prayers, then we sat down for breakfast, we had something to eat, and we drank. What did you drink? Water. Where did you get the water from? From a brook. There was a brook of water on the edge, on the side of the road, and we took the water. We made a blessing, and we drank. Baal Shem Tov jumped up, excited. What's he excited about? That they drank water, a cup of water. How many times a day do we drink a cup of water? And he said the following. He said, the entire creation, from the beginning of time, that water was waiting for you to come and make a blessing on it and drink it and use it to strength to fulfill their mission. And I think about it when I travel, as I said, sometimes I come to a new place. I was in Cape Cod, I told this story. You know, sometimes you walk somewhere and you wonder, who walked here before us? And whoever it is, but now you're here. Maybe this spot, this moment was waiting for you from the beginning of time to do something that would change this place. It's an unbelievable way of thinking of life. You can never be bored when you think like that. Everything has exciting opportunities. Every person you meet, everywhere you go, because you're there for a reason. And it could be that you're the one that's going to fulfill the purpose of something that's been waiting from the beginning of time. That's like tremendous. If you think about it, it's not just some religious concept. Today, in physics, this is basic thinking. Everything is energy. There's no such thing as making a mark that doesn't live on forever. Everything is energy. Everything produces energy. There's no such thing as just an inanimate experience. Everything is connected to us. The observer affects what it observes. And the butterfly effect. A little breath, a little gust of wind in Kansas can create a typhoon in Singapore. Or whatever cities they use. Because we live in a symbiotic world. Everything affects everything. And what Judaism has, Jewish mysticism has, it's not just everything affects everything, but it's waiting for you. Specifically, you have something you can accomplish. Imagine you would feel that way, and everyone would feel that way every time you speak to somebody. That this is a gift sent to you. Here's a person, a soul. A special soul, a dignified soul sent to you to meet you. You're intersecting with this person. What's the reason? Is it just for you to take advantage of the person and they take advantage of you? Is there some deeper element to it? And the same thing is when we walk down the street and we look at a bird or we drink a cup of water. Doesn't matter, whatever it is. It's filled with energy. In a way, it's like being a true spiritual business person. A business person, wherever they go, especially if they own a business, they're always looking for opportunities. They come to a party, right away checking out the joint, the lay of the land, who's here, what business cards I'm gathering, who can I connect with, who I can benefit from, who can benefit from me, opportunities. Always looking for an opportunity. The Torah tells us that that's the way we should be looking at life. Everything is a spiritual opportunity. which of course means it's not always about you. It's not just about you're going to gain from it in the material sense of the word, but you will gain tremendous spiritually. And every human being and every interaction has that opportunity. I was trained to think this way. I saw in my life people who live this way. It's not very common, because most people do live in the world. Most people in this world are busy exploiting. They're busy looking for something that's good for them. We all have a beautiful side. The question is what dominates. What are we doing most of the day? So we mimic those that came before us. We were used, so we use others. That's how it works. The blind leading the blind. Well, the Torah says you can stop it in its tracks, and you don't have to continue the vicious cycle. And you can begin to change things by looking at a situation and saying, what can I bring here? Why is this opportunity coming my way? Has it been waiting for who knows how long for me to redeem something here? Or for me to be redeemed? I believe that this is a message that can be taught to everyone. It resonates with all of us. And then, of course, the challenge is to implement it in our lives. And not to easily forget and get distracted and go back to our roller coaster lives. But to really internalize this, and it becomes a driving force in your life changes big time. Because it also adds another thing. You stop focusing all about me. You start focusing about things, you start seeing things you wouldn't see before. Two people could be in a room, or two people could be in a seat. Some people see something and some don't. Who are those that see? The ones that see are the ones that are not looking at themselves. Yourself is your biggest enemy. It's also your biggest ally, but your biggest enemy, because it blinds you from seeing other things. When a person is in deep pain, or is completely consumed with their own needs, they can't see. They will not hear others. Even on a spiritual level, you have the story with one of the Rebbes. He was studying, immersed in Torah study, and in the home where he was studying, a baby fell out of the crib and began to cry. And it was his father, who was a greater scholar than him, who said to him, and he was so immersed in the study, he missed the cry, couldn't hear the child crying. So you'd think, wow, that's a great virtue. He's so immersed. His father said, how could it be that you're studying God's Torah and you would not be sensitive to the cry of a child? In other words, there's also sometimes spiritual selfishness. It's about me. So me could be sometimes immaterial things. It could be also something that's soulful. The people who are sensitive to others are people who are not self-focused. That doesn't mean we shouldn't take care of our needs. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't take care of ourselves. But it means it's not the beginning and end of your life is you. You're here to give. You're here to serve. You're here to protect. And unfortunately, because we are hurt so often ourselves, we become defensive, as I mentioned. And then we become focused on how to protect myself from others. How to get what I need. Nobody ever took care of me. Nobody has ever watched over me. Now I have to do it. There are people who grew up in very unhealthy homes and for years were silenced and not allowed to be themselves. And then when they finally discover through therapy and hard work and pain themselves, sometimes they go the other extreme. They now leave room for no one else. I know a few people like this. I remember asking one, I said, you've become what was done to you, you're now doing to others. Now it's all about you and no one else. That's what your parents did to you. And she said to me, 20 years that was done to me, now I need my 20 years for myself. So I said, look, you need to do what you got to do to heal. But remember, the goal is not to stay there. The goal is to create a balance. Hillel said, if I'm not for myself, it will be for me. That's correct. But then he added, if I'm only for myself, what am I? We need both. So it's true, children nurtured by parents and develop a sense of confidence, sense of self, secure sense of self, will then be much better givers. Whereas people who are deprived of sense of self will be takers, because they're trying to protect their turf. They're trying to find their place in this world. Two wrongs don't make a right. You want to do is find balance. Being a giver is finding your strengths. Being a taker means that you don't think you have enough to give. You're not secure enough to give. You think you may disappear if you start giving too much. So the chapter Metzora is all about this type of self-containment. The Kabbalists explain that even the leprosy itself is a form of an illness that is actually all about self-containment. I heard one of these TED conference talks. There was a woman, I think her father was Turkish and her mother was French. She's a storyteller. And she said, like, from her father she got the type of deep spirituality and tradition. From her mother she got atheism, and scientific analysis of everything. She said she had a grandmother in Turkey who was like a healer. It's an interesting thought that she shared. And when she was a child, people would come to her grandmother, and everything her grandmother did was draw circles. When anyone had a problem, she would draw a circle. Physical circle. Sometimes a circle in the sand and had the person stand there. Sometimes circles on their skin. Sometimes circles metaphorically. And as she got older, she asked her grandmother, who was a proven healer, people trusted her. This is one of these TED conference talks. And she said to her, she asked her grandmother, what is the thing with the circles? So her grandmother told her, everything that is enclosed dies. Fresh air is necessary to be healthy. So when a person has an illness, and if you enclose it in a circle, you crush it till you kill it. That was her perspective, which is what motivated her, one of the motivations to become a storyteller, because she felt through stories she could break out of the circle. So in communities, people living in ghettos, people living around other people with the same mindset, these things are very destructive forces. They're very maybe good in your young age where you need consistency, you need nurturing. But at some point, lech lecha, you got to get out of your land, you got to get out of your habits, you got to get out of your comfort zones. And it's interesting, the people are able to do that. Breathing. Where does an infection fester? When it's concealed, when it's locked up, when it's surrounded. There's no breathing room, there's no spout. I met a person who terrible pain in their lives. Psychic pain. Very, very, very emotionally wounded. Grew up in a very disturbing home. And I asked him, did you ever cry? He said to me, I have never cried. Last time I cried, when I was 6 years old, and my father told me, you don't cry, babies cry. Father telling this to a 6-year-old. So that was it. It became like a sin to cry. So I said, so what'd you do with all your pain? He says, it's in here. And I'm terrified to begin crying, because if I begin, I'll never end. I have so much to cry about. And I thought to myself, the analogy of the spout, when you boil water in a kettle. Imagine there's no spout. It'll boil and boil. What will happen? It'll explode. You need a release point. Everybody needs a release point. Tears, the Kabbalists say, wash your soul. They're a form of release. It's an expression. It wells up and you express yourself. Even a cry out, when you cry out, oy vey, or some other cry, when it's appropriate, it's a necessary expression from the depths of a person's soul. Imagine a person is silenced. What happens to the cry? It begins to implode. And you have layers and layers and layers of tightness, actually even physical tightness. You ever hear somebody gives you like a massage and they say you're very tight between your head and your heart? Your neck is very tough. Because what happens is the body does not forget. The body gets tied up in knots and it will always retain what was not released. And those tears that were not released. So I'll tell you what I did with this fellow. I didn't know what I could do to help him. He was sitting, I remember, in my office. So I asked him to stand up. I went over to him and I hugged him. He was like, he froze up. I never felt something. It was like a metal beam I was holding. And I saw how tight he was. It was all in his body. And no one had ever hugged him, I guess. I don't know if that was helpful, but it definitely didn't hurt. He was like shocked in a way. So we all need that type of that. We need to breathe. And to breathe needs fresh air. Just as I said before the question why God created birds that chirp, why did God create that we exhale and inhale? How many times an hour? Anybody knows the numbers? I'm sure you can Google it in our information revolution. You'll get the information like this. But many times a day. Why can't we just take one breath every morning and then we exhale at the end of the day? 72. It would become 72 per hour? Yeah. Okay, there you go. Was that like a wild guess or?
Usually normal respiratory rate is about 11 to 12 minutes.
Okay. 72 is actually a holy number, by the way. Ayin Beis. It's also a discourse that I'm teaching now. Ayin Beis, 72. But give or take a little, right? So why did God make it that way? It would be like a lot more efficient for the machine to breathe in once in the morning and then breathe out once at night, or maybe breathe in once in your lifetime and breathe out at the end of your life. We don't eat every second, hopefully. So you eat a few times a day. It's enough fuel for the rest of the day. You could ask, of course, the same question with meals. We'd be a far more efficient machine. So as I said before, the reason we consume is we eat because God wants us to have a relationship with the world around us. And the same thing with breathing. He wants us to have a relationship with the world around us. You exhale and inhale. You're always connected to the world around you. You need it. Without the air, you can't live. And then you exhale. But it also teaches us a lesson that you always have renewal in your life. You never have the same stale air. Always fresh air. You hold in a breath too long, it's not healthy. And the heart is the same thing. Heartbeat. Expansion, contraction. A guy came to me a while back and said to me that his wife is too restless. He'd love to have some animal bliss. So I said, like, how much animal bliss do you want? Like, how peaceful? He said, absolutely peaceful. I could use it. So I said, like a straight line like that? So he said, yeah. So I said, go to a doctor, a cardiologist, and tell him that you have a straight line. You're not going to like the result. A heart that looks like that is not exactly good. A heart has to look like this, the heartbeat. Now, not extremes, extreme peaks and extreme valleys, but life is about breathing. And breathing means not self-containment. Gossip, slander, any of the vices that we indulge in are all about a self-contained state. It's not about breathing. It's not about getting out of the comfort zone. It's about yourself. Staying stale air, recycled air, what we call incestuous inbreeding, metaphorically speaking, that any ghetto mentality has. Now we all begin maybe living that type of mentality, then you want to broaden your horizons. So, birds, interestingly, they do chirping and twittering, but they do something else they do. They soar. They fly. So there's another side to them that we could also learn from. Instead of incessant twitter, also the ability to fly, to soar, to take wing, and know we can fly to greater places, transcendent places. So if we all had this attitude, as I said, that whatever experience you meet, whatever person you meet, is an opportunity, a spiritual opportunity, to be able to help us all fly, instead of an opportunity to just talk and chirp and twitter without purpose, I think we'd have a much better world. So the experiment has to begin in this room right here, however is online, to try it out. Try it out in your own little life. I don't know if we can do a cold turkey change of everything, but tomorrow morning or tonight, once in a while, give it thought what I've said here this evening. The thought of, why am I here? Why am I meeting this person? What's the opportunity? Has history been waiting from the beginning of time for us to sit here together and maybe share something? That's a pretty amazing way to look at life. And as I said, it's also the best antidote to boredom. Because it gives you cause to think about this and look at every situation as another opportunity. So there you have it, the Metzora, the Twitter and the Metzora. If any of you work for Twitter, you want to tweet this message, feel free to do so. Twitter and Metzora. The Metzora was the one that first revealed to us this concept thousands of years ago, before there was this thing called Twittering. And hopefully we can have the lesson when it comes to our own information revolution, information age, to realize it's a great blessing. It's like the apples on the tree. Information is a great blessing. The ability to access it anywhere, anytime, anything, anywhere, anytime is an unbelievable blessing. Isaiah the prophet said that the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Tell me if that's a more apt description of our time. How did he know that thousands of years? Waters that cover the sea. That the land will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Now that's a pretty big, you'd say, a deluge, waters covering the sea. And the whole land is filled with such knowledge. However, he qualifies it by saying it's divine knowledge. It's not just knowledge. Divine knowledge, meaning knowledge that has divine purpose. So the knowledge and great information revolution is great. What's missing is one final ingredient, the God particle, as they call it. To focus our information toward the right end, toward the necessary end. I remember, I shared this story here. I was traveling to East Hampton, maybe 10 years ago, for a Shabbaton weekend. It was Friday afternoon. I stopped at a gas station. And while I was filling up the gas, right near the gas station was a club. So there was a guy there parking cars for people coming for the parties that night. And he asked me if I'm staying for the party. So I said, well, I'm going to the party, but not this one. Anyway, we start talking. And he asked me what I do. I guess he was intrigued with me for some reason. And I told him, I write, I teach. What do you write? And he says, you know what? You send out an email every week. Yeah. I'll put me on your list. And he gave me his email address. So, of course, I took it and I included him. And I went on to my journey back to East Hampton. Years later, maybe, I can't remember exactly, at least 5 years after that episode, I get an email from him. An email. You probably don't remember who I am. I am the fellow you met in the parking lot 5 years ago on your way to East Hampton. He remembered everything. He says, you probably didn't know that I was Jewish. You thought I was some redneck in some Long Island town parking cars. And I am Jewish. I lost my parents at a young age. I never went to any type of Jewish education. But meeting you has changed my life. Because after you started sending me your emails, they became my Judaism. I pray with them. I study them. It's my Yom Kippur. He started listing my Yom Kippur, my Rosh Hashanah, my Tisha B'Av, my Purim, my Sukkot, and so on. Because I write about it all, and he was following it. And I was like blown away. You never know. After that, I became this what do we call it? Harvester of emails. I became this meshugana for emails. Wherever I go, I meet people. I said, give me your email address. It became like second nature. And sometimes it sounds a little weird, like they think I'm just trying to sell something. Because I saw here technology. This would never have happened. If it would have said, you know what, I'll call you, I'm in New York. I don't know if he was coming to New York, meeting, email. Press of a button. He gets it, I send it. It eliminated all boundaries between people. And in this case, a person's life changed because of it. Simply getting a weekly thought that spoke to him. So I realized the power of a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. But there's zelu umazeh, there's the antithesis. Everything has a counterforce, which is when information is swamping us, it's also a flood. But it's flooding us instead of us using it, it's using us. And that, of course, is as destructive as the other one is productive. And that's our choice. We have a great blessing today. Whether it's Facebook or Twitter or email and so on. You know, a guy wrote to me, some holier than thou rabbi writes to me, he's shocked that I'm on Facebook. Now, mind you, he's writing to me an email. So I wrote back to him, I'm shocked that you're on email. You know, what do you mean? Facebook is just 10 years after email. Since when is email holier? You want to be holy, what are you doing on the internet altogether? You know? But people like Jeff Bezos said when he unveiled the Kindle, he said that people were shocked it's going to the destruction of civilization, no more books, now it's going to be e-books. So he made a great statement. He said technology is anything created after you were born. That's technology. Once upon a time, before Gutenberg, the printing press was technology. It's just 400 or 500 years that they didn't have another way of delivering content. And Socrates, 500 years before that, said, or more than that, said that the first time they began to put down things on a tablet, on papyrus, was the downfall of civilization. Because people are no longer retaining and going to have conversations. They're going to write everything down. This is long before our age. So the problems have existed from the beginning of time. As I said, junk in, junk out. It all depends on us. These are tremendous tools. They can either fill the world with divine knowledge, like the waters cover the sea, or they can fill the world with knowledge that overwhelms us, and we lose sight of anything, and we become less human, more depersonalized, less conversations, less heart-to-heart discussions. Or you can use an email. Try it out. This is a good exercise. Send one email tomorrow. If that's too much, one this week. That's not for any selfish purpose, just a nice, kind note to somebody. That think of someone that maybe deserves a nice little few lines. Then you've used technology for what God wanted. And you start getting a little addicted to that style as well. It's like using these tools, like I said with the apple. It's waiting for you to use the proper way. That's why this technology was waiting from the beginning of time. Remember, Adam, Moses, the great didn't have technology. But technology is not man-made. We've created instruments. But the technologies that allow computers to work, the energies that allow computers to work were there from the beginning of time. Whether it's quantum mechanics, because subatomic particles, cellular energy, nuclear energy. I mean, it's energy that allows us to access and create all these communications. That energy was there from the beginning of time. God planted it into the universe, and it took centuries, it took millennia, it took the 20th century till we finally started discovering these invisible forces, and now we manipulate them to be able to access anything, anywhere, anytime. So it's been waiting also from the beginning of time. Our generation, like the story of the Baal Shem Tov, the water was waiting for his students. Technology has been waiting for us. These energies have been waiting for us. And what are we going to do with them? Are we going to eat the apple just for our indulgence? Are we going to Twitter and chirp just for our own self glorification? Or are we going to use the gifts that we were given, the technologies that have been waiting from the beginning of history to serve its purpose, which is to connect the people like we've never been able to connect, with warmth, with love, with a message that's meaningful, with something that's elevating, something that connects us all. And today there's really no excuse. Today you can connect to anyone. You can send out a message. 7 billion people hypothetically can connect with it, except the newborns. So let's make it 6 billion people. Fine. It's also pretty good. So there you have a positive lesson from seemingly a negative chapter. Metzora, Tazriya. Sazriya, Metzora, actually Sazriya means to conceive. Isha Sazriya, when a woman will conceive. Birthing. Metzora means leper. So basically it says in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, one of the earliest, maybe the earliest Kabbalistic work, some attribute it to Abraham, that Ein Lamata Menega, Ve'ein Lamayla Me'eneg. The word for Metzora, Nega, which is a disease, that disease, is the same letters as the word pleasure. So the book of formation says there's nothing lower than when a person falls in this spiritual illness due to gossip, and there's nothing higher than reaching divine pleasure. So we have the choice, like I said, either to elevate to the world to the highest levels, to give birth, Sazriya, or Metzora, to stoop to the lowest. And that's our choice. Today we don't have this illness, but we have the illness is there, except it doesn't take form on leprosy. Today it takes form in human dysfunctionality, in the maladies of how we interact with each other or don't interact with each other. So gossip, talking about others, is far deeper. It really means there's no communication. You speak to someone with love and kindness, you're not going to be gossiping about them so fast. So the best defense is offense. Words of love are the best antidote to words of hate, or words of distrust, or words of just plain gossip that have no benefit altogether. So God bless us all that we should use our words wisely, and we should chirp and Twitter for the right things, and to use our skills, our blessings, and realize that we are here today, this time, this place, because from the beginning of history we've been waiting for us, each one of us, to do something revolutionary, to do something that unprecedented, that no one that ever lived or ever will live can do what we can do. So live up to that. And we'll all be proud of each other. And it's my honor to intersect with such unique souls like yourselves that have been sent here to earth by God to do something unprecedented. It's my honor to meet you all in that context. And that spirit. Talk about emails. Please leave me your email address. And you never know. And more importantly, send to your emails or to your whatever communication, texting, SMS, the whole list of communication tools. Send a warm message out there. And you never be surprised. It wouldn't hurt. And maybe you could start sending a weekly thing to your friends. Just want to send you something nice. Remember, that's how you tip the scale. If every one of us adds a little of such light, it's a counterbalance. And don't think that one person is not. It's like that famous story. Everybody thinks they're pouring water into a big barrel because everyone else is pouring wine. No, then it's going to be a barrel filled of water. Every cup is necessary. Every effort is necessary. If just a room like this would begin doing something like this and it catches on slowly, we can tip the scales, tip the balance, the tipping point. So I want to also announce that we have the Omer book here available. Some of you are familiar with that book. We also send out a daily Omer reminder. If you want to receive that, just let us know. And a new book on Pirkei Avot, which we study now, the Ethics of the Fathers. Velvel is holding it up. Beautiful new book that is also available. And Philip will be giving his class. Yes, tomorrow 7 p.m. if you want information on that. And we will be here next Wednesday night I'm assuming back at the regular location on 5th and 19th. But we send out an email that tells you all about that as well. So if you're on the email list, you'll definitely keep you posted. Up-to-minute changes. Maybe we can start tweeting like if there's changes, every second. And again, it's an honor to speak to you. And everyone have a very pleasant evening, a pleasant morning, pleasant afternoon, wherever you may be in your life, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.